for showing up tonight. We are so excited to have you. And tonight we are joined by an incredible group of Black veterans who have each served our country in different ways and continue to serve our communities beyond the uniform. So their experiences, their insights, and their leadership remind us that service doesn't end when deployment does. It evolves into advocacy, mentorship, and community building. So I am honored to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to start with Ed Anderson, and he is the Georgia lead organizer for Common Defense, a nationwide grassroots progressive veterans organization. He is he is a veteran of the United States Air Force, where he served as a meteorologist and is a retired public school educator. And he has lived in Atlanta for more than 35 years. So let's clap it up for him. Next, we have retired Major Tracy L. Galladay Corley. So, Major Tracy Galladay Corley service expands 21 years. She joined the United States Air Force in 1989 and served for 11 years on active duty and 4 years reserved as a public health manager. In pursuit of her educational goals, she separated from the Air Force in 2001 after 13 years of working in the civilian sector. She returned to the active duty in 2014 through a Air Force Commissioned Officers Training Program. In 2015, she graduated from the Air Force Social Work Residency Program at Wright-Patterson.
National Center in downtown Atlanta.
Throughout her 21-year career, Major Galladay Corley received several awards and served in various capacities across numerous duty stations, including Mountain Home Air Force Base, Idaho, Davis Monthan Air Force Base, Arizona, Germany, Ohio, North Dakota, Hawaii, and Korea. She also undertook deployments to Kuwait in support of Operation Desert Fox and Port-au-Prince, Haiti, in support of Operation Provide Comfort. Major Galladay Corley earned her master's social work degree from the University of Michigan, specializing in children and families with a minor in management of human resources. And she received her Bachelor of Science degree from Park University in social psychology and holds an Associate's of Environmental Medicine degree from the Community College of the Air Force. She is a long-standing member of both the National and Greater Detroit Associations of Black Social Workers with over 20 years of service. So let's clap it up for her. All right. And next we have Ms. Vidya Barnett. She is a disabled Air Force veteran, advocate for women veterans, and is a community organizer. She has a master's degree from George Washington University in women, gender, and sexualities with an emphasis on Black women veterans' health and mental well-being. After a 2019 stroke, she discovered that the outdoors is a sanctuary, which aided her journey to recovery. After recovery, she tirelessly worked to break down access barriers faced by military members, veterans, and their families in enjoying state, federal, and national parks. As the founder of the Vet Space, she works to create opportunities for healing and empowerment by addressing the unique challenges faced by women veterans, helping them begin the journey to live fulfilling and joy-filled lives. This includes providing the opportunity to focus on joy and experience the healing power of nature and the camaraderie found in sisterhood. She is the co-chair of the Black Veteran Caucus at Common Defense and a life member of Disabled American Veterans. As a two-time triathlete and a two-time marathoner, she finds joy in pushing her physical and mental boundaries through exploring the great outdoors. And when she isn't exploring a nearby trail, glamping, or kayaking, she is visiting wineries, brunching, or reading and writing historical fiction. So let's clap it up for her. Next, we have Kyle Bibby. He is the co-CEO and co-founder of the Black Veterans Project. He has also served as the chief of campaigns and programs at Color of Change as a political partner with the Truman National Security Project. Kyle is a proven leader dedicated to equal rights, social justice, and ending wars. He is a former Marine Corps infantry captain and Afghanistan war veteran. Prior to his role at Black Veterans Project, Kyle served as a deputy political director for Common Defense, the largest grassroots membership organization of progressive veterans. Previously, he was the director at the New Jersey Reinsurance Corporation, a nonprofit agency with a social mission to remove all barriers to employment for citizens returning from incarceration. He served as a Presidential Management Fellow assigned to the Office of Management and Budget in the Executive Office of the President during the Obama administration. In November of 2016, he transferred to the Office of Congressional Affairs for the U.S. Agency for Global Media. He finished his fellowship as a legislative liaison to Congress. Lastly, he has received a master in public education from Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs and a Bachelor of Science in Political Science from the United States Naval Academy. So let's clap it up for him. And then last but certainly not least, we have John Thomas Jr. He's an Army veteran who served from 2007 to 2019. One combat deployment as a combat medic and currently a licensed practical nurse in Atlanta, Georgia. John was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and joined the Army out of Sumner, South Carolina. He's the father of two, and his hobbies include being a sports enthusiast, karaoke, and intramural events. So again, I do want to thank you all for being here and for the paths that you have paved for us all. So I do want to start by talking about what first inspired you all to serve and how your perspective on service has evolved over time.
Well, I'll tell you what, being the senior person amongst our group, I'll start with my little story. I also want to give a shout out to my alma mater, Temple University in Philadelphia. But I joined the Air Force back in 1975. And primarily, the reason I joined was to defer my student loans. Vietnam was going on at the time, starting to wind down, this and that. I marched against the war in Vietnam, but I wasn't anti-military. Couldn't grow up in my father's house like that. But I had a strong social and moral consciousness that led me to oppose the war. I could call it my first exposure to racism in the military, but I don't want to give him that much credit. But when I went in the Air Force, when I first went in and talked to a recruiter, this old Southern white guy, he was going to put me in security police. And for those of you that don't know, security police back at that time walked around B-52 bombers with M16s, and that's what they did. So since we didn't have the internet and all that stuff back then, I wouldn't let them get in touch with me. I walked back in, a brother was in there. He said, you're majoring in physics at Temple and this guy wants to make you a security policeman? And he put me on the path to become a meteorologist. And I was forever grateful for that because that led me to bigger and greater things. I used to fly through hurricanes and typhoons, and I became the first Black meteorologist on an Atlanta TV station back in '88. So the military has been both a blessing as well as a cautionary tale for me. I advise anyone that's thinking of going in the military to make sure you got your P's and Q's straight. That's the best way to put it.
I'll share my, I was a young single mom. I had just turned 20 and I did not see any way to take care of myself and my daughter. Both my parents are Marine Corps veterans. My mom is a Marine Corps veteran. My dad's Vietnam War veteran. And I had several uncles that were in the Army, Navy, and one was a recruiter at the time. And he just shared like, hey, you know, you're super smart. You could probably do really well in your ASVAB. The military would be a great place for you to start. So I joined the Air Force. I actually did my swearing in on the day that President Clinton swore in January 1993. And for me, it was a game changer. Like it really changed my life. I was able to provide for my child. I became a medic. And so once I got out the military, I was able to work at a local county hospital, continuing doing the work that I did. So it really changed my life. Back then it was in the, in the 90s, it was a different type of world than it is today. My daughter just got out the Coast Guard. She did 8 years in the Coast Guard. And so for her, it was a totally different experience where, people couldn't, for the most part, on paper, they couldn't bully you, cuss you out at work and things of that nature like they did when I was in. So I was able to really advise her on her rights while she was serving in the military. So, yeah. And my husband's an Army veteran.
Well, while I didn't, serve personally, I've always admired, the sense of discipline and, sacrifice and community that military service actually represents. And I imagine that the reasons people choose to serve and what the service means can evolve as, life goes on. And, I'd love to kind of hear from, obviously more of you, like, has that perspective actually changed over the years?
I wouldn't mind sharing on this one. So I can give a bit about, I joined at 17. I was um, I was 15 when 9/11 happened. I lived in New Jersey. I lived in a town where a lot of people worked in New York. And I think for me, my choice to join the military at the time I felt was very service oriented and like this sort of noble notions of, honor, courage, and commitment. But as I got older and I learned what I was feeling as a young man, I think what I recognized was I really joined because I was afraid and because I was a young man that was looking to better understand where I could fit in the world and where I could find value in myself, right? And I will say this: I found it. The Marine Corps. They'll give you some answers. The Marine Corps have you thinking about some stuff. And I was in the Marine Infantry for 7 years. So it did start off as a bit of me, like a bit of the brochure, right? Like reading it and thinking this sounds great, and I'll have camaraderie, and I'll get to travel. But you also learn nuance. I learned that I can be proud of, my personal service while still having some dissonance and confusion about why we were deployed to certain areas or about how we, use our military and how, we treat these young folks who come to volunteer, and especially going through the VA. I got out and, I will say I have excellent VA healthcare, but I've definitely had some headaches in terms of, hearing from other veterans and the stuff that they've dealt with and how difficult it could be. So, I think you learn a lot of nuance in the military because you're asked, you're doing something where you could even feel like everything you're doing is right and you're trying to make a good impact on the world and still find yourself in an institution that you might even be critical of yourself, right? Which, I'm sure we'll get to this a little later, is something that, I think all of our organizations can really bring voice to, right? I think that's one of the important things that we should that'll probably be a through line tonight. But yeah, so that's kind of how my view of things changed over time.
And I'd like to piggyback off of Kyle. I too joined at 17. My story is a little more comedic than anything. I was actually injured, hurt my ankle pretty bad, and I could not get away from the recruiter. And they were hounding me for like 3 months. Eventually they gave in. And being 17, you know that you cannot sign on your own volition. So my mother had to sign me away. And then, I went to Fort Benning in Georgia. And my military experience was quite defining. Basic training was an eye opener for me. And then when I got to Fort Sam Houston to do my medic training, I was a combat medic first. My orders said medical healthcare specialist, but there it says, welcome to Fort Sam Houston back then, home of the United States Army combat medic. And so I looked at my drill sergeant and was like, what is a combat medic? He's like, what you signed up for. Look at your orders. What does it say? And I was like, medical healthcare specialist. That's not that. He's like, welcome to the Army. And you know, being a young kid from South Carolina, I grew up in South Carolina, having to deal with the culture changes. Military is a big blended family. I feel it's a microcosm of society, so we come from all walks of life, and there's some adjusting that happens from your leadership, your peers, and even the ones you call your friends. So I had a lot of adjustments going on. I'm sure you're all familiar with what the wood line is. I've been there. And I feel like that helped me become the leader that I was, the man that I am, the father that I am. Very grateful for my service. I'm proud of it. And then, we can't be critical of our mission. I deployed to Iraq. I actually had a typo in my bio. I joined in 2004. So the Iraq, Afghanistan war was still going pretty good. And my deployment, our order said 12 months when we left. The day we got there on CNN, they said they had extended it to 15 months. So I had quite an experience, but I'm proud of my service. I'm grateful for the opportunities afforded for me. I became a nurse while in the Army, and thank to Miss Kaylin Hill for inviting me to this panel and seeing all these other excellent vets. I'm grateful for this opportunity to talk and see all our supporters across the country.
Of course. And
And-
thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you could go ahead. I was gonna change the subject.
Go for it.
Okay, so the next question, and thank you guys for your input. The next question that I kind of wanted to transition into was how, or can you guys share a moment from maybe your military experience that shaped who you are today?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that question. So I have the unique experience of being prior enlisted, getting out and coming back in, and enlisting on the officer's side, which I don't know what was going through my head, but I was glutton for punishment, but we made it through. But I will say probably the most impactful thing that kind of shaped who I am is being an officer in the military, and as a mental health provider, sitting down with everybody. But the most impactful for me is having people behind closed doors tell me how appreciative they are. One, to see a Black female officer, and two, to see a Black female officer mental health provider. And so I never really thought of the magnitude of what I do and how that could impact people on such a deep level. So, so quite often, all it really took was just somebody listening to them, just in one session. So I would say the most impactful thing is people really telling me how much they appreciate seeing me in the uniform and as a mental health provider because they could relate, or they felt that I could relate to them.
Hey, Tracy, if I could add, I want to thank you for being a mental health provider because ain't no shame in my game, but the VA mental health providers saved my life. And the issue of mental health, as well as the health of the VA, is very prevalent right now amongst veterans as well as the general public. So I just want to let you know I appreciate your work as well.
I would say for me, one of the most impactful in this spanned a long period of time is I had a NCO, which is a non-commissioned officer, who bullied me relentlessly. And the whole time I was like, if I'm ever a boss, I want to do everything totally different from this lady. And so anytime I've gotten to any leadership position, that has really, really made me a relaxed leader, supervisor, manager, where people are apologizing because their kid is sick. I'm like, yo, family comes first. You don't need to apologize for me for nothing. You gotta leave for that reason. Take it. And so it really has shaped the way that I do everything that I do. Family is first, mental health is first, the individual is first in everything that I do. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, even in the military, which is the only employer where people can be bullied on the job and people get away with it. It just really was, it shaped the way that I do anything that I do. And Ed can attest to that. I'm so low key when it comes to any work. If you can't do it, or if you don't have the capacity to do it, is okay. It'll be there tomorrow or the next day or the next day. So yeah.
I did want to piggyback on the mental health aspect as well. One moment that shaped my leadership style is when I first became an NCO. My first unit, the unit I deployed with, they were pretty much by the book, strict. There's a striker unit, so they were all happy. Army got new toys, and we were over there 15 months. I came back and I came to a TRADOC unit, which is in Fort Benning, Georgia, and I had a soldier, who had trouble with his physical fitness, and I was tasked with helping him get better. But I took it initially as a punishment because I had to do PT before we did regular PT, and then PT in the afternoon with him. And I questioned his effort. And I can be very concise and demeaning, as we learn in the military, to try and motivate someone. And he called his mother, um, saying he felt like he didn't want to be in the Army no more, didn't want to live anymore. And I had a senior leader, try to, run me as punishment, but I was 21 at that time, in excellent shape. So that didn't work. But I'm glad I had, you know, aunts and, my grandmother that helped me with empathy. And so I had to reflect on the fact of how I talk to people. And from that, I lead with, intent and love with talking with people, but we're going to get the job done. Um, and so from that moment in the military, I feel like it helped me be a better nurse, a more understanding father, pretty good partner and teammate, whatever situation I'm in.
Okay. Perfect. Well, it's clear that your guys' experiences have shaped not just how you serve, but like who you became after. And listening to you, I'm thinking about how those experiences connect to identity and how you carry being, a Black American or being a Black American and a veteran all at once. So how do you guys say you've navigated that intersection in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think I could share a little bit about that. So I had an interesting experience because not only was I Black and a veteran and an American, and like you're dealing with the traditional sort of like double consciousness. I felt like sometimes in the military you deal with a little bit of a triple consciousness because the military has this mystique and this sort of elevated status in our society that people really revere the institution. I was an officer, I was a captain, so I carried like a level of reverence beyond that. To give you an example, I remember one time I had a company command out in Japan, and I had some trash in my garbage bin, and I literally picked up the bag of garbage and I was gonna go walk it to the dumpster. And this gunnery sergeant who had been in for like, almost 20 years, he practically tackled me and he said, "Sir, I better not ever catch you taking out the trash ever again." And he was like, "Somebody else could take out the trash. You go sit behind your desk and make some decisions." I was like, "Oh, okay, Gunny." Right. But that's just sort of like, that's not a normal sort of experience really, for a lot of young Black men. And I had to remember, there's times when I came home and, I could literally, this actually happened was I went from that command, flew home around Christmas time, went to Best Buy to go buy some gifts for my family, and I got followed around the store by this big old security guard. And I remember just thinking, like it'll shatter any drop of respectability that you think will save you, right? Like it didn't matter that I went to the Naval Academy. It didn't matter I was an Afghanistan war veteran, a captain in the Marines. None of that mattered. I apparently was there to steal from Best Buy, according to this guy, right? And he followed me around everywhere, and then I even went up to him one point. I was like, "Hey man, you know what a laptop chargers are? Because you right here, you might as well," you know what I mean? But like, so, balancing all of those things became, it was definitely, I dealt with, stuff growing up before the military a little bit. I was in a majority Black town, so like I always felt like I was, reinforced and safe in my identity, but it was something to kind of now deal with the jarring differences between being like this military officer in this revered position and then to come home and still just have people remind you, that you're not the main character, my brother. So.
Mhm.
I would say in a lot of the veteran spaces that I go into, I've done some testifying on Capitol Hill in DC when I used to live in Maryland, and at the Maryland State House, and then also here in Georgia. the pushback when I notice, okay, they see Black first is, you know, I'm testifying, and then I will say something about as a Black veteran or as a woman veteran, and then I would have individuals saying, see, you're so divisive. Why do you have to say women, or why do you have to say Black? And I'm just like, but our experiences are different in this arena when we're talking about, you know, women veterans experience sexual harassment at the VA. That's not something that men endure, you know, or as Black women veterans, our pain isn't, we're seen as drug seeking if we're saying that we have pain and the pain medication is not working. And so just being at those various intersections, sometimes it is difficult to navigate when you're in predominantly white spaces, especially in the veteran world. But then I also look at it like I'm representing my people. I can hear my grandmama say, girl, you out there representing us, you know? So, you know, I hold my head up high, you know, I represent, I don't believe in respectability politics, but I do believe you're going to respect me. And so I'm very clear on that when I go into these spaces. Like I deserve to be here just like you do.
I'm with you on that, Vidya and Kyle. You know, I kind of tragically had to kind of laugh listening to you, Kyle, because um, I was a Black man in a predominantly white career field in the military, overwhelmingly white career field. And the way the Air Force works, when you walk into a weather station, the highest ranking person is the weather officer. And what I encountered was I would be on duty at the weather station, and I'd have some, you know, E3, E4 weather observer working for me. And they would walk in, look at me, I'm the highest ranking person there, and they would ask for the duty forecaster. And, you know, too many times. And then when I transitioned out of the military, um, the one thing the military taught me was if you take on a job, you better know how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, learn how to do it. And that led my children in later years to call me anything for a buck, because I didn't turn down any opportunity to make some money legitimately. And then went on to teach school. And one of the things that really amazed me when I started teaching school here in Atlanta, the Black kids would say to me, "Why you talk white?" Now, at the same time, they want to know why I worked at radio stations and TV stations and this and that. But you know, they couldn't put the two and two together to come out with understanding that it's kind of like code switching. We got to be able to walk both sides of the street. You know, I can sit down and drink cold duck with the guys on the loading dock, or I can drink champagne in the boardroom. So, you know, the military taught me that flexibility. And that's one thing I'm always been grateful for.
Okay. And has there ever been any contention between all of these identities that you guys have, between being Black, you know, American and veteran, and you know what they actually represent?
Um, I would like to add something. My name is William Rones. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel with 21 years in the military, and I was a B-52 navigator and radar navigator, and then transitioned to the C-130.
Okay.
Hey, Colonel Owens, I appreciate you, because we use C-130s to fly into hurricanes and typhoons. Love that airplane.
I think we lost him.
He got muted. But to answer your question, the most contention I felt is when the whole Colin Kaepernick debate was going on.
Okay.
Some things became apparent that weren't necessarily really spoken of before he started that. And that was a very tricky time. I was still active duty at the time as well. And I apologize for saying
This isn't school. You can talk.
but being being a Black veteran is polarizing to me now, especially with the current social climate. I do have pride in my country, my nation. I'm born here, but the history is the history. Um, and I feel, as Black veterans, we continue to be the model for, our demographic, our community. We're talented. A lot of us are vastly talented, and I think that's very understated. As we continue to grow and evolve through life and deal with these challenges. But I would say Colin Kaepernick's stance was a very polarizing time for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for me, it started to be apparent during COVID, when George Floyd was killed. And even more so now that I'm a veteran. I have never in my life ever thought about uh, while I'm in the military, I have never in my life thought about like not standing for the national anthem or why am I standing for the national anthem? And now I find myself having these thoughts about, you know, do do they earn does the United States of America do I need to stand for them for what they stand for? And so even though I've served, I'm always going to show up Black. That's just how I am. There is no showing up any other way for me. I'm going to show up my authentic self, and that is a Black female. And so now when I encounter things where I have to pay respect to a flag or a country that I don't feel respects people that look like me, it has become very difficult for me.
So mine is a little unique. I was actually on duty at the hospital when the O.J. Simpson verdict came through, and you could hear a pin drop. And the Black people, we all kind of just gave each other the look like, type thing. But and hearing our patients moaning and groaning and being angry and just, their responses. I was stationed at Lackland Air Force Base at Wolf Hall Medical Center, by you, John, but years before, back in the 90s. And so that was really like they actually told us the next morning, like, no one's to talk about this, just go about business as usual. We're not addressing this, we're not discussing this. They're like, if patients bring it up, regardless of what you think, you can't comment on it. And so it made it for, several weeks, I would say, very like you were walking on eggshells at work. And so that's when I kind of saw like, dang, I thought you was cool, until the verdict came down, and I was like, oh, okay, I gotta, handle you a little different now. So yeah, that was our for me back in the 90s, that's when I really saw a difference. Like, okay, I'm not seen the same, even though, we're working together, we're, bopping our gums and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, there was that power, that power shift.
And the honesty around the tension between those identities, obviously is really powerful. And what I'm hearing is that even within that complexity, there's still like a deep sense of pride and responsibility that comes with each part of who you actually are. And that makes me think about how those experiences shape how you show up for others. So, how has your military experience, your military background influenced your view on community?
Well, I think that the military definitely fosters community. It is probably the first time that I really really experienced community was in the military. I would say probably one, if there is one downfall of that, is that that community isolates itself, I feel like, world. And so, you know, what I've done is try to make sure that I was connected not only to the military community, but also the civilian community where real things are happening, you know, real life is happening. And so it definitely fosters community. I have lifelong friends from years from back in the day. But I do think that although they do things in the community, the real connection to the community and what's really happening lacks a little bit for me. So through my organization, the National Association of Black Social Workers, Greater Detroit Association of Black Social Workers, is where I get real life and what's going on through those organizations.
You know, if I could piggyback on that a little bit, one of the things that we in Common Defense try to encourage and promote, Kyle used the phrase earlier, was the veteran mystique. Veterans have always played a prominent role both in uniform and out of uniform. At various times, Congress was comprised of over 60% vets after World War II and so on. Now it's under 30%. And it's reflected in some of the attitudes we see in Washington. More and more vets, and I saw there was a question in the comments earlier, but more and more vets are being sought out to take on roles in elected positions and elsewhere, because as a veteran, we still, the military and is still one of the most highly regarded institutions in the country. I don't know how long it's going to stay that way, but veterans carry a certain sense of responsibility, maturity, and willingness to do that bodes well for community work.
If I could say something about one of my experiences in my squadron. When I was stationed at Pope Air Force, we had a squadron of almost 30 African Americans, pilots, navigators, engineers, and loadmasters. We couldn't figure it out how we all got into that one squadron, but we took advantage of it, and it was like an us against them type environment. And I just happened to be one of the senior leaders there that I would bring the young folks under my wing, and we would have barbecues. We would get together and try to make bonds, and we were very successful at that. And so the folks that I was associated with at Pope Air Force Base are folks that I know today. They're airline pilots. They're doing all kinds of great things, and I couldn't be prouder for them.
I just want to touch on, like in the Army, we have our Army values, and one of the values is selfless service. So I feel like most military members get that value as well. And I think that's where most of our sense of community comes from. I always love to see like a community fair. I've done a diabetic education fair here. So it seems natural to, give back, in my opinion.
Okay. And how would you, or it's kind of very striking how your service informs not just about your own life, but the ways you connect with and support others. And building on that, I'm curious about the broader perspective. Like, what's something about the Black veteran experience that often gets overlooked or misunderstood?
I would say for sure that Black women have served. I think when the movie 6888 came out, it kind of put Black women out there. But my mother is a Vietnam Air Marine. I'm an Air Force veteran, and my daughter is a Coastie. So, you know, that's 3 generations of Black women who have served this country. And here recently at my mother's 75th birthday party in August, like I did not know that so many of my cousins that were women served. And I mean served in every branch in this country. And so here I am, you know, first cousins. I'm like, yo, I didn't know you served, you know. And so I just think that gets lost. You know, I feel like our brothers are seen, but Black women aren't. And I mean, we can go back as far as, you know, Harriet Tubman serving, and yeah, I think she just got her general status by Governor Wes Moore earlier this year, bestowed upon her. But then you had Cathay Williams, who served with the Buffalo Soldiers. So Black women have been serving this country for generations, but we've been erased. And so I think that's why, you know, it really upsets me with what's going on currently with the trying to erase women in our service or downplaying our service. I have friends that have shrapnel in their brain that are women. And I'm talking about women who are 40 or 50 years old walking around with, you know, metal in their bodies because they went to Iraq or Afghanistan and they served honorably. So I think that's, for me, that's number one. Like when people hear veteran, they don't think Black women.
Yeah, and I could add a little another thing that I think is overlooked is, and this is, you know, this is a bit of the unfortunate history of the US, is that the service that we are always thanking people for, the reverence that we have for the military, was oftentimes still not enough to counter the sort of racism that people had to deal with. And, you know, that's what birthed this Black Veterans Project that we deal with. You know, we spoke with, this was born in 2018. Me and my co-founder, Richard Brookshire, we were both in New York going to school. We went to a veterans event in Brooklyn and just talking to some of the veterans there about their benefits and the access that they weren't able to get because of Jim Crow. Many of them, you know, talking to vets who were like, yeah, actually, I was born and raised in Mississippi. I returned to Mississippi after I served, and I returned to a segregated South. And the VA office was in a part of town where I knew I could not go. And even if I went, you know, like I knew that I might as well just file my paperwork in the trash, right? So, you know, I do think that that is something that, you know, it's, in my experience, it's something where when we bring it up to people who know the history of racism, sometimes they're not surprised. It's like the not surprised but shocked thing. It's like, of course that too. Of course, unfortunately that too, right? You know, I think that is something, and that's been the bedrock of our organization, is to do that reparative justice fight, to get that sort of benefits, that back pay for the Black veterans that were denied it. But, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, we do talk about, you know, thank you for your service and the reverence for our service members, and you know, we could never thank them enough. Well, apparently, actually, you could thank some of them enough. You know, you turn many of them away from the benefits that was due them. And as much as, you know, I do think in this country, I oftentimes have a bit of my own, I have my own feels about how much we talk up the military, because I do think, you know, we have learned to worship the culture without paying what is due. And it ain't just Black veterans, because I'll tell you, when we looked at the benefits, the one part of the United States that had the absolute worst benefits allocation, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was hands down the worst, right? So, you know, we were not the only ones who had to deal with this. You know, so, but it's something that, you know, I think is like a forgotten story that doesn't get told enough, and we intend to tell it. So,
Okay. And quite obviously a question to all of you guys. What would meaningful support for Black veterans look like in practice?
Um,
That's, I'm sorry, John, you want
for me, I feel it's the quality of the services we've given. I understand, you know, our government is currently going through a shutdown. But even prior to that, the location of where you get your services really depicted on the quality of that. And I really feel like that's a disservice to all veterans. Even here in Atlanta, the more rural you go out, the facilities are newer, but the service is different than what I would receive at the Atlanta VA, even though it's an older facility. So I think for me, it would just be, you know, like Kyle said, thank you for our service and thank you, all these thank yous, but then there's very little action to replicate that.
Um, if I could say something real quick, I think that just like the gentleman was saying, that everybody wants to give that lip service and say thank you for your service, and even the politicians do that. But when it comes to funding programs and funding projects and facilities that will help veterans, they always shy away from full funding, and they always shy away from making sure that we, as 1% of the population, are fully taken care of. I mean, we put our lives on the line, but we have to justify every day everything that the government gives us, and it's just not enough.
Right.
And I would say that meaningful support, if you think about what's happening today with the military, I mean, we just gotten to a place where, at least in the Air Force, where they were recognizing that the disparities between Blacks in the military and others in the military specifically. Things such as shaving waivers for Black men, right? Acknowledging awareness of our differences and what we need just as Black people. And so, the Air Force did a survey. I think it came out in 2020 as it relates to the discipline that African Americans receive and how they receive more discipline than other people in the military. They did a whole survey, and now the administration and all of that progress of acknowledgement of the needs of Black military members and veterans, all of that progress is now being rolled back, and which is, quite upsetting. I mean, I just received a text from one of my military, female military officers, and she said, check on your military friends. We are not doing well. Just literally just yesterday. And so all of that progress that seemed to be made in helping us to feel whole and wanted is now being rolled back.
I think another way that we can serve Black veterans, and this is one of the reasons why I serve predominantly Black veterans, is providing resources for our disability claims, making sure, because we disproportionately, like Kyle said, we get denied more than our white counterparts. So making sure that there's follow through, there's follow up to make sure that veterans are getting their VA disability, because if there's a homeless veteran and they're not getting any of the services that are due, that can change somebody's life. Like that can be a complete 180. If they are getting their VA disability checks, they're getting healthcare from the VA, now they're getting mental health support. They're also getting access to educational benefits. They're getting access to housing. So there's a myriad of programming that is out there that I use my daughter as an example. Before she got out, and there's this thing called the TAPS program, it was a transition assistance program. And it really hadn't changed from when I got out in the 90s. The only difference was hers was on Zoom. And so because myself and my husband were able to help her navigate through that process, we were able to help her get her VA disability benefits, get her education benefits, things of that nature. But she's just one of how many Black veterans get out of the military and just don't know what resources are available or have that support to see it through, because it is daunting, it is discouraging. And so I just really feel like there has to be some type of bridge program with even Black organizations. So we're talking about the Divine Nine and NAACP and Black Voters Matter, making sure people are registered to vote. And so there's room for all these Black organizations who are out there on a national level to partner with those individuals who are transitioning out of the military and standing in the gap.
Okay.
If I could, Lawrence, sorry to interrupt. I got a hard stop, so I'm gonna have to hop off in the next few minutes. But I did just want to leave with a couple comments from folks. You know, in terms of, I know we're eventually going to get to things that, you know, people can do in this moment. You know, one thing I used to tell you how close these organizations are on this call. I used to be the lead organizer, the national campaigns manager at Common Defense. I've been on plenty of emails with Ed. I know their team over there. You know, Black Voters Matter. I worked with them when I was at Color Change. Like, this is all a big movement family, right? And what I tell people is, you know, Netflix, Hulu, whatever it is, get all the accounts you can, right? So get on everybody's newsletter, follow the information that you can. But especially, I think in this moment, it's important for Black veterans to be speaking up about what's been taking place. You know, if they want to lend us this mystique and this elevated position in society, we should not leave that power on the table, right? And I think especially, you know, the elephant in the room a bit is like the recent military deployments that we've seen to our communities, right? You know, asking people from other parts of the United States to come into our neighborhoods and come into our communities and snatch up people, right? You know, so I think it's something that we should be very unafraid to speak up on. And me, as like a former infantry officer, I watch these guys in full battle rattle, combat gear, to go and snatch up people in front of a Home Depot. It's absurdity. It's political theater, and we need to lean in on that, and we need to say that. So, but I did want to say thank y'all for convening this. I'm sorry I have to jump off. I know the rest of y'all get to stay on, but my mother, it was my birthday a couple days ago. My mama waiting for me for dinner, so I gotta go. So, but take care, y'all. Black Veterans Project, hit us up. Thanks.
Okay, and hearing, you know, thank you all for sharing your insights so far, and hearing what meaningful support for Black veterans looks like really grounds the conversation in, you know, practical action and also care. And building on that, I'm curious about the bigger picture. Like, what is your vision for a free future, especially for Black people? And this will be the last question that I ask the panel before we open it up to audience. So please feel free to, you know, share openly.
I did have trouble with this question, you know, when y'all sent it to us. Because of the current social climate, it is very tough to try to, you know, put that into like one thing. But if I did have, you know, an arrow to give it, I would say a free future is, you know, the veterans not feeling like they're being given a disservice, disenfranchised. Not even just the medical facilities, you know, the support from mental health services, financial literacy, education. If there's no hurdles with those things, I feel like a lot of not just Black veterans, but all veterans could, you know, continue to ascend post their military career. Even if they got out under bad terms, you know, still being able to have a avenue to change their narrative. And yeah, hoping for the best.
That's a really tough question. I think about community care and just how when emancipation happened and how Black folks came together to create mutual aid societies, and made sure that there was no lack in the communities. There was shared resources. There was no hoarding. I think that's what it looks like to me, where there is shared power, shared resources, shared knowledge, shared education, down to child care, elder care. That's what that looks like for me. And that's what it was And that's how individuals were able to get these HBCUs. They put their money together to educate their children because their children were not allowed to be educated in other institutions. And so for me, that's what that looks like. And I don't know how we get back to that because there's so much hoarding of resources right now. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that, but I just don't know where we would even start.
Now, I will say, my hopes for the future are not entirely based on this one thing, but this is very important. The brothers need to show up to vote. Black men are not voting. And, you know, the other side did not get a majority of black male vote or this and that. A lot of brothers did not vote. Whenever we do things, I can always look for and see the women, the sisters, the white, brown, black sisters showing up, but the black men don't vote. And if that continues, it's not going to bode well for our community.
Well, I'm just gonna push back just a little bit. So I'm gonna keep this and I'll stay with veterans, but I think I feel like we did vote. And it takes more than just our vote, right? So a free society for me, so I'm gonna go military people. You would be surprised how many military members that I encountered that don't vote. They absolutely don't vote. They don't think the issues of the world involve them, right? It's not their issue. It's just recently, with all that's going on with their pay right now, have they started to pay more attention to what's going on with them. But I'm gonna tell you, in the last 10 years that I served in the military, the amount of military member that don't vote is astonishing to me. Very disappointing. And so them taking themselves, getting registered to vote through mail, through email, like we do, absentee voting is critical. And so I think we put way too much on Black people, right? We're not the only ones that live in this country that could swing that vote the other way. And so I just push back a little bit on us carrying the load of what's happening today in this world. So a free world for me right now is Black liberation, the principles of Nguzo Saba, getting back to self-determination, faith, all of those things that our ancestors used to bring us to where we are today. We need to get back to that. And that's where I see that we as Black people, Black veterans are going to be free.
Yeah. Yes. And thank you guys so much for that. And I just wanted to add lastly, like my vision for a free future, especially for Black people, is one where we can thrive without barriers, where our communities are safe, our voices are valued, and opportunities for education, wealth, and leadership are just truly equitable.
Right.
And it's a future where we can define our own narratives, we can support one another,
Right.
and build systems that reflect our dignity and humanity. And with that in mind, we want to hear from all of you. Like now we're opening it up to the audience for like questions or reflections or anything that you'd like to share with our panel.
I would like to say that Tracy Gallaudet Champagne is my only friend who's retired. Her work with the military and her foresight into how to maximize military service. When she went back to the military at over 40 years old, we thought she was crazy. But now that she's retired before 60, we see how smart she really was. So we need to start teaching our young people about how to benefit from the military and how we can get benefits and how we can. My husband just got medical benefits. It saved us $1,200 a month because he's a diabetic. So it's just so many benefits that we can get. And I wouldn't be the social worker if I am to say there should be no homeless veterans. There are millions of dollars available for veterans in every community. So if a veteran is in service, there is a supportive services of veteran families program, and they can get the resources that they need. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, anybody else want to jump in and say anything? And it's perfectly fine if not.
Comment for a second. So, well, of course, my name is Larry Johns, but great panel. And so I come from retired Marine veteran. I worked at Department of Veteran Affairs for 4.5 years. I'm at Department of Defense right now, working with the Navy, clinical social worker. So, it is so much to unpack, right? But it's kind of ironic. So, how many of you guys listened to that speech by Secretary of Defense? Everybody listen to that speech?
Pete Hegseth, yes.
Yes.
So it's kind of ironic. So today, we all had to go to the military formation today, and but before it's over, the CEO was telling the military personnel, "Hey, I need to make sure that everyone sees this video." And then before the day was in, our director said, civilians said, "Hey, look here, I need for all one to watch this video." So we got a portion that we saw 45 minutes of this here. If you want to know where they are headed at right now, I mean, I never listened to any of those folks more than probably 3 seconds, to be honest with you. But this is my first time listening to this thing. If you really want to know where they're headed at with the military, you need to hear that speech. And it's going to tell you a lot about, where we stand as, Black men, Black people, women, I mean, he clearly laid it out there. If you don't fit, if you don't fit their agenda, then you're like out and you're non-existent, basically. And and I say this because it was a true eye opener. And and unfortunately, they are seriously about closing the loopholes, doors to resources that's going to benefit our culture and our community. So it's incumbent upon us to look towards ourselves to try to move forward where we are, because if we keep trying to go up and say, "Hey, give me a hand, lift me up," they're not doing it. That door has closed, and he made it clear that the door is closed. It's not happening. So we're gonna have to really kind of be within and get those resources from one another. That was my big takeaway from that. And listen to you guys today, and you guys got a lot of great resources, but it's also getting this younger generation that's in the military, our veterans, to understand what's happening as well too. I just got a nephew who just got kicked out of the military. Watch this, Tobin Day. Just got kicked out of the Marines for smoking dope, and his dad told him, "Don't you go out there messing with in the drugs." And sure enough, now he's out of the military. So sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, just doing that.
Okay.
Excuse me. I would like to apologize. I wasn't a part of your panel, but I was interjecting, and so I will keep my mouth shut in the future.
No, you can interject. We just thought that you dropped off.
That's completely fine, William. We have that every time. This is a community conversation, okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
and if you
great.
wanted to make a comment now before we were to wrap, because I don't want to hold you guys too far past.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to watch that video. My stomach just turned, Brother Larry, when I watched that video. And I literally had to call and send messages to my friends to make sure that they were okay. So it's going to be scary as to how that's going to impact active duty military members. and though as they transition out to become, as veterans. It's going to be interesting and sad all at the same time.
I do want to make a point. Being in medicine for about 20 years now, one thing that is common, that is before a disease dies, it usually has a rally. It ramps up in its intensity before, it succumbs to the therapy that's being given. And I feel his speech was exactly that. The intimidation, the fear that they have for themselves is being manifested and emboldened by, our commander in chief. But it's there for a reason, because just as, we continue to grow as a nation, we're going to evolve, and they see the writing on the wall. And this is just the last rally before, hopefully a benevolent change comes to our nation, but nonetheless, a change is going to come.
Okay. Well, I do thank you all again, or thank you again to our incredible panelists for sharing their stories, and to everyone in the audience for your thoughtful questions and reflections. Tonight, we explored service, identity, community, and visions for a freer future, conversations that remind us of the power that we have when we come together. And we hope that, you'll join us at the book club, which is our next event I want to invite you guys to continue the conversation at our Education is Power book club on next month, which is Wednesday, November 19th. We'll be reading Rest is Resistance, exploring what rest means for social justice work and how we can redefine it in our lives and our communities. So I will, if Matilda, I'll pass it back over to you, but she might not have anything else to say. But we do thank you so much for coming today.
Yes, thank you, Lauren. I'm going to pass it over to Kaylin. She's going to close it out. But before that, I definitely want to let you all know the app or the platform that you signed up for to attend this event is going to ask you for your feedback. Please give us that. This is the last volunteer virtual panel that we're going to have this year, and we're going to start planning for next year and what topics we want to cover. So not only do we want to hear your feedback about this event and the great panelists that came on today, but we want to hear your feedback about this particular program. So definitely give that feedback through the Mobilize email that you receive, or you can email us directly. Kaylin and I will both drop it in the chat, and I'm passing it over to you, Kaylin, to close us out.
So yes, again, thank you to everyone who has joined and participated in tonight's panel. Tomorrow, we will actually be having an action item type of event that connects with tonight's panel. We will be writing postcards to communities in DC as well as in Memphis who are currently being affected by the militarization of the military. So we're wanting to uplift those communities and, making sure that they know that we still support the community and want them to also support the community. I also dropped the link so that you all can not only get to that event for tomorrow, but also sign up for additional events. Because again, we are all about our volunteers. We appreciate your all support and love to have you all in this space. So definitely look forward to having you all join us at our next event. And feel free to, like Matilda said, email us if you have any additional questions, and we'll definitely keep you all updated along the way. Yes, everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. And yes, while everyone is leaving, shout out to the panel once again. Thank you. Thank you. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you all. And welcome to the volunteer team. Just want to add that there.